Hello. Today we are going over all three matchup graphs: quarterback, running back, and receiver. I'm also going to go over my favorite value pick for each of those. So starting off with this quarterback matchup graph, my favorite value is going to be the first overall pick, and that is Caleb Williams. Going against this Jacksonville defense, I've talked a lot about, and it hasn't really been for a good reason. They're 32nd against quarterbacks, as you can see, but they're also 32nd against the pass, and it's not relatively close. They're 45% worse than any other secondary in terms of facing quarterbacks compared to that NFL average, about 10 points per game worse. So Caleb, through 5 games, has gone from 7 points to 9 to 12 to 19 to 23. Slowly getting better, has looked amazing these past 3 weeks, and the volume has been there. The Jaguars are third highest in man coverage rate. So there's two things. One, the coverage fit for the Bears. Man, they should be really good against. And two, Jacksonville's not good at it. The two teams that run it more are the Broncos and the Browns. Jacksonville's third, and they're still one of the 10 worst teams in the NFL in man coverage. Where the Broncos, they're really good in it. They have elite corners, a great secondary. It's working for them. There's a reason they're running it so much. Jacksonville, I don't know why. They're 1-4. They're also allowing the most explosive pass plays. That is very correlated with man coverage, especially if you're not good at it. So Caleb, he's got 3 elite receivers that are all healthy now, going against man coverage one-on-one, and then they're also running a ton of deep routes against a team that allows a lot of explosive passes, specifically DJ Moore and Adunze, the 2 outside guys. Then to end it all, you got Caleb Williams, who scrambles a ton. When you're a young quarterback that already scrambles, you tend to over-scramble as you're learning the game, the NFL game, and when you're against man coverage, that equals a lot of rushing opportunities. So Caleb, lots of explosive pass play opportunities, a really high ceiling, and a really high rushing ceiling. All things that I love to see against a defense that's pretty bad. So it's going to be at 9 in the morning. We'll see how it goes. The 2 guys that everyone should play every single week play each other: Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels. The Bengals and Ravens last week combined for 80 points. They are 2 of 3 teams that are incredibly efficient in offense and incredibly deficient in defense. That third team that is in that category is Washington. Looking at the left side of this graph, Stroud is honestly sit-worthy this week. He is right next to Aaron Rodgers, and the weekly Aaron Rodgers is kind of a good comp for Stroud this week, not because of his talent, but 3 things. 1, he doesn't have Nico Collins, so the receivers aren't as good as the usual. New England's pass defense, and Drake May on the other side. I love Drake May. I also think that he might die on Sunday. So he's exactly where Aaron Rodgers is, and I think that's a good comparison. Josh Allen right over there in that same spot against a Jets defense. He's still like a start. He's Josh Allen, but the Jets secondary is really good. They have amazing corners against receivers that are already not the best. So the passing, the ceiling for that, definitely lower. And the rushing, the Jets, even though they do run a lot of man coverage, have been pretty good against rushing quarterbacks this season, and they did really well against Josh Allen last year in terms of containing him. In his 2 games last year, he had 36 rushing yards and then 15. And then in his 2 games in passing, 1 blow-up game, maybe the best game against the Jets all year, 275 and 3 touchdowns. The other game, pretty horrible day, including 3 interceptions. So don't love Allen, but obviously still a start. Jalen Hurts against the Browns. The man defense helps his rushing. The weapons are going to be huge. If both weapons are there, I like it still. The big one, a tease for later, is A.J. Brown. Look at the running back graph. There's actually 2 guys that I would say are my values of the week, and like they're the same running back. They're sophomore running backs, explosive runners, pretty good matchups, and got volume last week that we haven't really seen consistently. The first guy is Chase Brown. These last 2 weeks, he's been an RB1 in terms of volume. Top 12 guy in his volume the last couple weeks. I think you got to start him if Zach Moss misses this game. But even if Moss plays, I think he's worthy of a start. Giants, pretty solid matchup overall. Not good against explosive runs. And Brown, ever since he's been in the league, his explosive run rate has been one of the best in the NFL. So definitely lower floor, higher ceiling. That other guy, if you haven't guessed it already, Tajay Spears. Going against Indy, he had 17 touches last week. That was double his previous season high. And it was against a Dolphins team with a really bad defense and a backup quarterback. And they put up 31 points and won by 20. You would think they'd have a very similar game plan against a Colts defense that's really bad and a backup quarterback on the other side. Not that Joe Flacco's Tyler Huntley, but still, they're going to be at home against a run defense that is 31st in explosive plays allowed. I think if Spears gets close to 15 touches, 12 to 15, he's an amazing start against that defense that is definitely closer to like 32nd against the run than they are 24th. The 2 that everyone wants to know about, Bijan and Hall. Please, guys. Carolina's been 32nd against the ground this year, closer to average against receiving running backs. Hull, the exact opposite. Buffalo, dead last against receiving running backs, closer to average against rushing running backs, but the positive for both of them outside of that. Buffalo, they're all right on the ground. They are still 32nd in terms of D-line versus the offensive line that adjusted yards before contact. That's where the Jets have been horrible. So it's 32nd versus 32nd when they're both extremely stoppable. Who's going to win? Hopefully it helps Breece Hall just a little bit more than normal. It gives them a little bit more room to work with against that overall not the best rushing defense. Then we look at Atlanta. The benefit for Bijan Robinson is not only are they 32nd against the ground, but part of that is because of the game script. They're consistently losing. So for a team that does throw the ball a ton, if they do get up, get him a little more touches. He's now 10 days off that Thursday Night Football where they said he's good to go, but he was limited all week and didn't get much volume. Hopefully he gets his full volume, and if he is like top 5 in snaps and touches again in that running back room, then he's set up extremely well for that ceiling game. Speaking of the number one offensive line and defensive line matchup, that is Derrick Henry. We always have Derrick Henry ceiling weeks. This is one of those where it just screams that. Washington, dead last in terms of adjusted yards before contact, and obviously not good against running backs in general, 31st on the ground. Baltimore, first, gives Henry a ton of room, and Washington also last against explosive run plays, something Henry tends to do a lot of. Washington, on the opposite side of that, Robinson Jr., kind of the exact opposite for him, like not the best offensive and defensive line matchup at all. Definitely a better day for Jaden Daniels. There's not much receiving to be had. It is definitely another extremely touchdown-dependent day for Robinson Jr. He had like a 7-carry, 16-yard, 2-touchdown game. That's kind of like the dream for this, is 2 touchdowns and you end with 17 points only still. Stevenson over here, kind of like Chuba Hubbard when Bryce Young was the quarterback. Not that I expect May to be as bad as Bryce Young, but it's one of those things. 3, lack of receivers, lack of offensive line, and an amazing defense against a quarterback that the offensive line is horrible, the defensive line is incredible. I don't think they're going to score very much, and I think everyone's going to know that they're going to try to run every play. So probably get a lot of touches. I just don't think they'll be very valuable. Jacobs I like better here and close to that same area. Arizona's defense is fine, but it's nothing to like avoid. They're actually below average against the run. Really good against receiving running backs so far. I think second best, but that doesn't affect Jacobs as much. Overall, I think he'll have a lot of scoring opportunities. I think he'll be all right. Cook in a scarier spot because he hasn't been involved in the passing game. He has 1 design target this year, and I think that's his biggest misuse. Is he's not really that check down receiving back, but he can be like that design receiving back and really get out those works one-on-one with the linebacker, let him go to work, especially when it's against man defense, because when you're playing against man, check downs aren't really the way to go. And that's the only work he gets. Josh Allen doesn't even throw him a lot of that, but they're not designing work and they're playing against a ton of man defense because receiving is pretty capped, and the Jets defense in general, they're rushing, it's pretty good as well. The receiver graph. Is it Tank Dell week? I know I just said that Stroud isn't set up well, and the same risks apply for Dell, but this is where the fun begins. New England, extremely good against outside receivers, not the best against the slot. Diggs is in the slot, Tank Dell on the outside. Gonzalez consistently shadowing those outside guys like Garrett Wilson, Brandon Ayuk, Jamar Chase, who haven't really done the best. But there's 2 things. One is Nico is out. And with a lower volume offense for receivers and really high efficiency, the yards per target, points per target are extremely high for Tank Dell these last 2 years, making that volume, the extra bump, that much more valuable. And 2, we are getting an extremely rare projection slot shadow for Christian Gonzalez. He's going inside on Stephon Diggs, leaving Tank Dell alone on the outside against Marcus Jones and Jonathan Jones. Marcus Jones, one of those rare guys that's actually like the same size as Tank Dell. He's a slot guy. And then Jonathan Jones, pretty average overall. Tank Dell has 1 career start without Nico. A career high, 14 targets, 96% of snaps, and he had 19 points. The other shadows on the week, Jamar Chase and Zay Flowers, theirs don't really matter at all. The 2 that are a bit of a downgrade, Deontay Johnson against AJ Terrell, pretty solid overall. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. against Jair Alexander. He tends to be more boom bust. It definitely fits that lower floor, higher ceiling. The thing with Marv, he is also the lower floor, higher ceiling with Alexander. They are using him extremely one-dimensionally for how diverse he is. And I think you look at his pro, like he's 6'4", speedster, you would think downfield threat, and that is what he is, but he's also everything else, and they're not really using him that way. 50% of his routes right now are vertical, so it's just really messing him up in terms of volume, in terms of everything else that comes with the chemistry in Kyler Murray. I think as time goes on, hopefully the play calling kind of switches around a little bit, and hopefully they get more of those vertical connections downfield, but right now they're using him in a more one-dimensional way that I don't love personally. I was talking Caleb Williams earlier. Same thing with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. Outside against man coverage, definitely a better matchup than Keenan Allen has on the inside. I know it doesn't really refer to that this year, but when we're looking at the corner matchup specifically, Chicago, Keenan Allen is going to be against Darnell Savage's. Only played 27 snaps, but he's better than the guy that they've had in there. So a little worse for Keenan Allen. And in terms of DJ Moore, not only those deep balls, but when Caleb's scrambling, if he can find green grass and get those yak opportunities against man coverage outside of just zone, then we could see those big 50-yard yak touchdowns that DJ Moore is known for. Wouldn't be shocked at all if that happened this week. I can't really give you too many stats that are positive for Olave and Shaheed just because we haven't seen anything from Rattler outside of preseason. He's a 6th-round rookie going against a defensive head coach in his first start, so it's tough. I will say Olave with backup quarterbacks has been better. Like Derek Carr, for some reason, seems to hate him. And Rattler, as a college quarterback, had extreme tendencies and production and efficiency in downfield explosive pass plays. That is what this offense is, and it's what Olave and Shaheed are. So that really helps their ceiling. Just those one play, 50-yard touchdowns totally could happen. Lower floor. Dontavian Wicks, no one is less patient than the fantasy community. I played him last week too. Don't worry. I suggested him like 99% of people. Like you probably should have. Trust the process, not the results. In games with Jordan Love this year, he's a wide receiver 1 in volume. Top 12 volume on the season with Jordan Love. He has the talent. He definitely has some issues. But against Arizona, he's got the best matchup on the team at least. They are really good against receiving running backs and tight ends on that inside. These last couple of years with their new head coach completely changed their philosophy compared to the old Cardinals, which were the opposite. So, not the most amazing matchup, but the best matchup on the team. Getting the best volume back-to-back weeks. No Christian Watson, probably no dubs. I'm fine with starting him again. In one league, that's a deeper league, and I have a couple injuries. I am starting him. So, we'll see how it goes. CeeDee Lamb up here in the top right, set up extremely well for that bounce-back week. Hoping and praying that it happens. We're looking at the last game against Detroit. 17 targets, over 200 yards. He's at home against a Detroit defense that is 32nd against the slot. That's where he'll be about 50% of the time. Then the other time, 50% outside, where they're still 25th. So hopefully he gets back on track, maybe even scores this week. That would be the dream come true. Looking at Drake London in his top right, just targets by week. 3, 7, 9, 12, 13. Every single week. Week 6, 15. I don't know. But good volume projection, great matchup projection. The only reason they're not 32nd is because they don't get thrown on because they're 32nd against running backs and they're always losing. So amazing matchup. The only thing that can be against them is game script. Love him overall. Obviously, they're moving him around a ton, so he'll be on all 3 corners, and none of the corners are good. Evans not being shadowed by Lattimore, sadly. Like, just for enjoyment, I would love it to happen like it always does. But doesn't seem like it's going to happen for some reason this time. He is consistently atrocious versus Lattimore. He has not had a good game against Lattimore since 2018. So, overall, low floor, low ceiling compared to his usual. Thomas Jr. been preaching his buy low for weeks, and it's worked out so far. I don't think it's going to work out this week, sadly. Jalen Johnson and co. really tough. I just don't trust Jacksonville in this matchup. It's really hard, flying all the way to London just to get torched, I think. So, tough matchup overall, but still, decent ceiling, decent amount of targets. Downs, though, with no Pittman, maybe no AD, set up for crazy volume. Like, I would, if you told me he's either going to get 5 targets or 15 on Sunday, if both of those sit, I would say, oh, he's probably getting 15. So crazy volume, love him this week, even in a matchup that's not the best. Just like it's hard, especially in a PPR league, like a slot guy, could get double-digit catches. And ending on a fun one, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith both play tough matchups against the Browns. Outside is where they're best. They have Denzel Ward in the slot. They're still really good, not incredible or anything, but you would expect on this, like, oh, A.J. Brown's got a little bit of tougher matchup, especially knowing that Denzel Ward's out there. The thing is, the Browns are first in man coverage rate. They played about 50% of the time. What we know about Hurts is he has two major tendencies against man coverage. The first one is he doesn't really throw in the middle of the field, where the slot is a lot of the time. Number two, last year, insane amount versus man, first read targets to A.J. Brown. Every single time. Every single time they're playing man coverage, I'm going to throw to A.J. Brown. So, just looking at that, we look at the efficiency versus man coverage. A.J. Brown, top 5. Devontae Smith, outside of the top 50. Just based on that, half of the plays are going to be like that. So even though the matchup is harder, AJ should get a really good week of volume if both are healthy. That's what I would expect. Thanks for watching, guys. Yeah, I don't really have anything else. So thanks for watching. See you soon.